very weird interview. Stormy Daniels starts off by talking about why exactly it is that she was, why she's doing the interview in the first place.
So he turned around and pulled his pants down a little, you know, he had underwear on and stuff, and I just gave him a couple swats. You are special. You remind me of my daughter. You know, he's like, you're smart, beautiful, and a woman to be reckoned with. I like you. I like you. You know, don't worry about that. We have separate rooms and stuff.
Did you two go out for dinner that night?
No.
You had dinner in the room?
Yes.
What happened next?
So I excused myself and I went to the restroom. You know, I was in there for a little bit and came out, and he was sitting, you know, on the edge of the bed when I walked out. Perched.
And you had sex with him?
Yes. I remember arriving, and he was watching Shark Week. He made me sit and watch an entire documentary about shark attacks.
It wasn't at that point a business meeting. It was just watching Shark Week.
Yeah.
Did you have sex with him again?
No. I was in a parking lot going to a fitness class with my infant daughter. I was taking, you know, the seats facing backwards in the back seat, diaper bag, you know, getting all the stuff out. And a guy walked up on me and said to me, leave Trump alone, forget the story. And then he leaned around and looked at my daughter and said, it's a beautiful little girl. It'd be a shame if something happened to her mom. And then he was gone.
Okay, so let's go through some of this stuff. Okay, so first of all, the actual interview starts with Anderson Cooper asking, why are you doing this? Right? He says, I guess I'm not sure 100% of why you're doing this. And she says, because it was very important for me to be able to defend myself. And he's leading her. The whole interview, Anderson was really giving her leading questions. Like, is part of wanting to set the record straight? And why don't you just tell her that part of it is wanting to set the record straight? And then she says, people are just saying that whatever they wanted to say about me, I was perfectly fine saying nothing at all, but I'm not okay with being made out to be a liar, or people thinking I did this for money. And people are like, oh, you're an opportunist, you're taking advantage of this. Yes, I'm getting more job offers now, but tell me one person who would turn down a job offer making more than they've been making, doing the same thing they've always done. She's doing it for money. I mean, sorry to put this out. Again, this story is really not about Stormy Daniels, about the President of the United States being disgusting. I mean, he's the one who chose to put his thing in, you know, to act inappropriately with Stormy Daniels, shall we say, to put it mildly. Okay, that's the President of the United States' fault. He's an idiot, and he's disgusting when it comes to women. Have I made that clear? Have I said that enough times? And he's gross. Yeah, I don't find the President's activity here even mildly defensible. But here's what I do object to. The media are trying to make Stormy Daniels to be some sort of victim. Okay, unless she was actually physically threatened. If she was physically threatened, she's a victim. Other than that, there's no victimization story here. She took $130,000 from a candidate for President of the United States to keep her mouth shut, and then she didn't shut up. Okay, and Stormy Daniels also said that she had consensual sex with Donald Trump. So this is not a Me Too moment. Now, what's really amazing is there are some people on the left who are trying to make it into a Me Too moment. And again, I'm happy to discuss all the legal ramifications of this. It may be a campaign finance violation. I don't think it'll take down Trump because you really have to prove a lot to prove a campaign finance violation. And I can talk about the legal standard and all that in just a second. But when Stormy Daniels says that when the media try to make her out to be some sort of heroic figure, it just doesn't wash. It just doesn't wash. Of course she came out after the election cycle because her story was newly valuable. And it's worth more than $130,000. So she figures, okay, fine, I'll give him back the $130 grand, and I'll make $500 grand by talking about all of this stuff publicly. But she probably isn't, I mean, again, she's transactional in this whole thing. Right? She said in this interview openly that she saw her sex with Trump as a business deal. She was asked, did you want to have sex with Trump? She said no. They said, were you attracted to Trump? She said no. They said, so why'd you have sex with Trump? And she said, well, I saw it as a business deal. Meaning that it was like she wanted to get on The Apprentice, and she thought maybe this would give her the possibility of getting on The Apprentice. And sex isn't exactly something that she's stingy about. So, all right. But now, what's hilarious is the left is trying to make this into a Me Too moment. I've seen a couple of articles about how Stormy Daniels was victimized by the power of Donald Trump. Okay, no, she was not, up until the point where a threat was made. Okay, up until that point, she's a lady who knew that she was sleeping with a married man in order to get ahead in the business. And this does raise some issues about the nature of the Me Too movement in Hollywood as well, because a lot of the talk in the Me Too movement in Hollywood has been about young actresses having sex with older directors in fully consensual manner, and then suggesting that the power imbalance is the real problem. Well, is it possible that they saw the sex the same way that Stormy Daniels did? That she didn't really want to have sex with Trump, but she also knew that if she wanted to get ahead, that she would, like, Stormy Daniels herself said it was consensual. She never accused the president of sexual assault or rape of any sort. And so again, the attempt to make Stormy Daniels into the hero of this story doesn't work. I think you can make Trump into the villain of the story. I think that it's hard to make Stormy Daniels into the hero of the story where she's clearly not the hero. So again, as I'm fond of saying, two things can be true at once in the Stormy Daniels interview. Donald Trump can be disgusting. Also, as I say, it is not unevidenced that Donald Trump would have people threaten people. In fact, there are a bunch of accounts that are put out there by BuzzFeed News. BuzzFeed has a long story about how in the 1980s there were a bunch of threats surrounding Donald Trump. They tweeted out a series of these threats, including there's one that in which a guy, his name Carmine, said called up somebody who was going to, I guess, sue Trump over a real estate issue. So my name is Carmine. I don't know why you're effing with Mr. Trump, but if you keep effing with Mr. Trump, we know where you live, and we're going to your house for your wife and kids. That's according to one caller. On April 20th, 1982, according to FBI records, one person called the New York Police Commissioner reporting that he received a call threatening his life over an abatement in rent by Trump. The caller, the FBI records state, became very abusive and profane regarding Gleedman's inability to approve Mr. Trump's request for a tax abatement. Donald Trump's security guards once shoved, threatened, and held a 12-year-old boy and his mother against their will. This is the allegation after her husband promised to go public with damaging allegations against the Trump organization. Again, is thuggish behavior foreign to Trump's organization? No, and that's really what this is going to come down to. When you boil all of this down, what it's going to come down to in the end is whether Donald Trump had his people threaten Stormy Daniels. That's the only added element here. The reason people are watching this story as opposed to the 1,000 other stories about the Trump administration is because there's sex involved with the porn star. Obviously, that's going to be kind of titillating for the American public, and that's why they are interested on any level at all. But the only way that this story actually gains some sort of legs beyond just the general interest is if it turns out that Donald Trump actually sent somebody to physically threaten Stormy Daniels. In that case, then you're talking about a real scandal. If it just turns out that it's his lawyer paid somebody else to shut up, I'm not sure that's a big enough scandal to take out Trump. Again, Trump abides by my strong market sufficiency theory. Everybody already knows what they think about Trump, good or bad, and there's not a lot of evidence that this is going to stick to them. Now, that's not going to stop a lot of people on the left from claiming that this is going to take down the president. But look, even Anderson Cooper had to go after Stormy Daniels' lawyer and point out that Daniels' lawyer is a former Democratic operative.
You seem to be saying that she has some sort of text message or video or photographs, or you could just be bluffing.
You should ask some of the other people in my career when they've been on me bluffing.
In college, in law school, you did opposition research for Democratic political operative Rahm Emanuel. Some people looking at that will say you're politically motivated.
I haven't done anything in politics in over 20 years.
But this is not the usual case you take on. You were a former Democratic operative, and you're talking about deposing the president. That sounds political.
No, it sounds righteous.
Okay, it doesn't necessarily sound righteous unless something righteous is actually going on here, and avoiding an agreement that you signed isn't exactly righteous activity. Again, I keep coming back to this. The only thing I think that matters in this entire Stormy Daniels story is if Trump sends somebody to threaten her, or if there's an actual campaign finance violation. Those are the only two things. Those could be big stories, but we don't have the evidence that those stories are true yet, and Stormy Daniels hasn't identified even the person who threatened her with Trump himself. So we're going to have to find out more about that. Listen, is it gross for the country that we're at this point? Of course it's gross for the country that we're at this point. I do find the lack of memory irritating on the part of some of the media who don't seem to recall all the way back to the 1990s when Bill Clinton was lying repeatedly about sex. And the same members of the media who are currently batting Trump around for lying about sex were saying, well, everybody lies about sex, so it's no big deal. Remember, all of the talk about perjury, all of the criminal charges that were brought against President Clinton in the impeachment hearing by the House.
Pretty mom,
all of that was brushed off by the media as he only lied about sex, so who cares? Well, I guess here they're not going to argue he only threatened about sex or he only signed an NDA about sex, so who cares? They're not going to do that because obviously it's Trump. But is it a sad state of affairs that this is the character of our public officials? Yes. Is it sad that the American people accept this? Yes. Is it pathetic that the President of the United States engaged in this sort of behavior and may continue to engage in this sort of behavior? Yes. It makes you sad for the Republic. It does. I mean, the Oval Office was once occupied by people like Ronald Reagan. It was once occupied by people like Calvin Coolidge. It was once occupied by people like Abraham Lincoln.
Old McMama had a bum, big old bum.
White House was occupied by Abraham Lincoln, but bottom line is that the character of the country has declined rather markedly when it comes to these sorts of matters, and Trump is more a reflection of that than a catalyst toward it.
Smooch, smooch, old McMama had a bum, E-I-E-I-O. E-I-E-I-O. Old McMama had a bum, big old bum.
Tragedy has a way of defining people.
And Spink slap here and slap Spink there.
What the hell happened, Teddy?
Here's Spink, there's Spink, everywhere slap Spink.
Or at least our version of it.
Old McMama had a bum, E-I-E-I-O.
These theatrics are not going to hold up.
E-I-E-I-O.
What have I done? Chappaquiddick, rated PG-13, April 6th.
College campuses have become an angry reflection of a divided country. On this night, police and protesters are out in force at the University of Utah. All because of this baby-faced 33-year-old father of two.
I mean, let's be real about this. Look at me. I mean, like, do I look like a physical threat to anybody? Do I seem like a physical threat to anybody? Last time I was in a fight, I was 14 years old. I was 2 years younger than everybody else in my high school class, and I was getting my ass kicked.
Ben Shapiro is editor-in-chief of the conservative Daily Wire and host of a popular political podcast downloaded millions of times a week.
Is that good for America, or is it just good for President Trump?
He's now at the center of a nationwide debate about whether conservative voices are being stifled by protesters on American college campuses. Just today at the University of Florida, tensions flaring during an event featuring the white nationalist Richard Spencer. In February at the University of Berkeley, former Breitbart commentator Milo Yiannopoulos shut down after protesters threw rocks and Molotov cocktails. And just last month, when Ben Shapiro spoke at the University of Berkeley, $500,000 on security.
It's amazing they had to essentially lock that place down for you.
And the headlines were nuts. I mean, the headlines like Berkeley braces for Shapiro visit. Really? Was I the one who's going to be smashing ATMs?
Indeed, just 3 hours before he's supposed to take the stage at 7 o'clock here in Utah, Shapiro says there are reports of possible violence.
I'm hearing some rumors that there may be some people who try to bring weapons tonight, which would just be ridiculous and awful. Going to be killed with my lectures.
A fellow conservative podcast host claims he's captured this undercover video of self-described Antifa members allegedly handing out knives and talking about luring fans of Ben Shapiro to their car where they allegedly had guns.
This is insanity.
Shapiro says this all speaks to a liberal hysteria on American campuses.
So your view is this is political correctness run amok?
Yeah, I mean, it's the furthest extension of political correctness. And when you say something, then it's not just me disagreeing with you, it is me destroying your identity as a human being in a way that is akin to violence.
Let me just read you from the statement that the folks who want to shut you down put out. They say Ben Shapiro has openly called transgender people mentally ill. He portrays the great gay rights movement as a conspiracy to root out God-based institutions. He has recently defended conversion therapy, which is nothing short of abuse.
Okay, so there are a bunch of things that are just not true there. I am unaware of any time that I have ever defended conversion therapy as such, said that it's effective, because I don't see the evidence that it's effective.
What about this idea that you call transgender people mentally ill?
I do say that transgenderism is a mental illness, because it's gender dysphoria, it's a psychological disorder. So that's not an insult to people who suffer from psychological disorders. You are not doing a service to people who are suffering from a mental disorder to humor them by suggesting that their mental disorder is reflected in objective reality.
It is important to note that the American Psychological Association does not define being transgender as a mental illness. A gender dysphoria diagnosis only applies if an individual experiences significant distress.
It's actually a natural phenomenon, and they're committing suicide because they're depressed, because people are mistreating them.
Then I'm not for mistreatment, but I don't think that we suggest that you're not for mistreatment of you.
Whether or not you agree with Shapiro, whether or not you think he is engaged in hate speech, there is little doubt that his speech is protected by the First Amendment.
They wanted a Jewish guy come to a college campus and say what he wants to say. That's we're not in America. That's ridiculous.
At just past 6 o'clock, and with the protests heating up, Professor David Vergobi, who teaches a class on freedom of expression here, tells us that many college students today do not understand that speech is protected unless it directly incites violence.
This is a public institution. It's a government entity. They have to guarantee the free speech rights of everyone, including Shapiro.
We find the leader of that group that has vowed to shut tonight's event down, who makes a startling admission.
I don't think he speaks.
But that doesn't really conform with the First Amendment.
I don't care.
You don't care?
I don't care.
Why not?
I don't think that's a relevant document right now.
The Constitution is not a relevant document? This thinking may help explain the increasingly violent protests against conservative speakers on campus. By shortly after 7 p.m. here at the University of Utah, Ben Shapiro is backstage ready to go on after his security team sneaked him into the building. One irony is that while he's hated by many on the left, he's also hated by the self-described alt-right.
I've been very, very outspoken against the alt-right. I've said the alt-right is a garbage movement composed of garbage ideas. That it has nothing to do with constitutional conservatism.
Shapiro is also fiercely critical of Donald Trump, and he publicly quit his last job at Breitbart News when a female colleague was allegedly manhandled by Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski, and Shapiro thought Breitbart failed to have her back.
And I quit under very public circumstances because Breitbart had been turning itself into a Trump propaganda arm, and the alt-right really liked President Trump, or then candidate Trump.
What kind of blowback have you received?
Well, I mean, aside from the 7,400 odd anti-Semitic tweets that I received from March to November of last year, death threats in the mail, death threats on my phone, death threats at my business phone.
Which is why Shapiro finds it hard to believe that protesters call him a white supremacist.
That is the stupidest thing I have legitimately ever heard. I keep hearing this, and I keep wondering, was it the Yarmouth that gave it away?
Shapiro has been interested in politics for as long as he can remember.
I found a paper from when I was 10 or 11 talking about the Clinton impeachment, so I assume I was into it even then.
Shapiro went on to start his own nationally syndicated column at age 17. His parents had to sign the contract for him. He graduated UCLA at age 20, put out 2 books by age 21, and graduated Harvard Law at age 23. As Shapiro takes the stage in Utah, it immediately becomes clear that all of his time on elite campuses apparently did little to temper his conservative views, in particular what he calls America's culture of victimization. On stage, he inserts himself into some of the most heated debates in our divided country, from police shootings to the NFL kneeling controversy.
Is racism real?
Yeah, of course racism is real, but I don't think institutional racism is necessarily real. So yes, of course there are racists, and racist cops who shoot black guys for no reason should go to jail and they should throw away the keys. But this idea that's put out there by these kind of broad statements about America being a discriminatory, racist country, I don't know how that helps anything, and I don't think it's actually true.
Isn't that to ignore our history?
Now I'll show you. Whatever. You put more Learning for the future century.
Welcome to Sight Work. Who are you? Select your player. Create your... Who are you? Who are you? Hello. What do you want to look like today? Tap on the game you want to play. Word machine. Control the word machine. Tap on the word called all. Wonderful. All. Get. 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 Bravo! Get. He. Excellent. He. New. Wonderful.
Don't care about your feelings. I think it's something that's
Wow. You. No. No. Splendid. No. Now, let's move on to the next level. Red. 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 Excellent. Red. Up. 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 You're the best. Up.
Head.
In. In.
2, 3. Go.
In. 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 Fantastic. In. It. 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 Superior. It.
Is necessary, in a world where we use this to not only abide by reality, but suggest reality and recognize that it breaks the sexist, bigoted, homophobic.
All right. I think it's just what so many people see as just a fresh of breath air with you and your work is just that commitment to objective reality, not the subjectivity that we see so often in front of us today with college campuses, universities, and what's just really just being pumped out. And so it's a powerful thing, and it seems, again, compelling that we actually have to talk about that. And Ben, one of the things that I think is compelling is that this particular worldview shift and this ideology of this subjectivity, our emotions really playing the defining role, it's coming out of universities, the places that are supposed to be rooted in logic, reason, objectivity, facts, biology, science. And what we see really is just the antithesis of that coming out of the university system today. We see really this worldview that's really developed and built upon pure emotion, not facts, not history, not reason, not sound thinking. And so that's, I think, one of the things that's making you such a formidable opponent to those on the left. And so one of the things that so many of us get excited about, and Ben, if you don't know a lot about us, our particular organization, End Abortion Now, we have been able to, by God's grace, save, at this point, thousands of lives across the country outside of abortion clinics, trying to minister to and to love the women and the fathers going in. And it's just been an incredible experience to be able to hold these children in our arms. And one of the great and tremendous blessings of what you're doing is just how you define, say, an issue like abortion. You hang on that facts don't care about your feelings, you hang on the objective reality and not the subjective feelingness of the issue. And so you define it properly, and you do it boldly. And one of the things that we appreciate, Ben, is just that you do that. You call it murder, you call it killing, and it's something that many legislators aren't willing to do. And honestly, Ben, and this is, of course, discouraging, but many, even in a pro-life movement, aren't willing to take the kind of bold stand that you do. And I think that yours is the most effective. I want to play this clip here, and this is Ben in one of my very favorite clips about Ben talking about abortion. This is clip number 2. Go ahead, Marcus.
She says that she's thinking about reproductive rights 1 minute from having a baby. This is about as perverse a notion as I could possibly imagine. That as you're about to have your child, you're thinking, boy, wouldn't it be great if I could still kill this thing? If you want to go to Planned Parenthood and get a contraceptive, go for it. I don't care. I do care when you start killing babies. This is a problem for me. Oh, here I am. Look how pregnant I am. There's a baby in here. This is my beautiful child. And I was thinking, maybe I should just kill it. We make these moral judgments all the time when we see a violation of moral law, and it is a violation of moral law to kill another human being, which is why we have murder laws.
And there you go. That's powerful. And I think what I want to hang on there, Ben, and hear you just elaborate on, is you rightly bring the issue of abortion down to the moral issue, which all, as you know, all legislative moves really have some component, some moral component to them. And you bring it right there to the moral issue. And I think that's vitally important. Again, you talk about this actress who did a video, and I love your response to it, Ben. Just the passion you had there was so important to me in terms of her saying she's just a minute away from giving birth, and she should still have the right to kill this baby. There's a baby in there, and I ought to be able to kill it. And you talk about abortion as a moral issue, as an issue of murder and killing. Can you just elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. I mean, one of the things that I always try to do, I'm obviously an Orthodox Jew, I'm somebody who believes in the Bible, but I try not to cite the Bible, I try not to cite religion as the basis for arguments in the secular realm. And when you're talking about abortion, you don't have to go to the Bible. I mean, that can provide the fodder for your worldview, but it doesn't have to be the source for the arguments that you're making. And the argument that I typically make is, this is either a life or it's not. And scientifically speaking, it is a life, which means that its value is greater than 0. And now the question is its value greater than a woman's quote-unquote right to choose? Well, if the idea is that a woman has a right to kill another human being because the human being exists inside the womb, or a potential human being exists inside the womb, depending on how you want to define it, then you have to be honest and clear-eyed about how this works. And unfortunately, those on the left don't want to do that. They want to avoid the fact that this is a baby in the womb. They want to avoid the fact that a human life begins at conception, which is obviously scientifically true. They want to ignore the moral ramifications of all of that. And so they seek a bunch of different ways of avoiding the reality of that situation. They'll seek to suggest that it's about a woman's right to choose being infringed upon, although I don't care about her choice in virtually any other aspect of life, just as I don't about any other human being. They'll suggest that if the baby is not quote-unquote viable, then this is an excuse for killing the baby, which, number one, doesn't apply to people who are outside the womb. If they're not viable, you don't just have to stab them. And second of all, viability is a moving scale at best, because we're all viable in different ways. People who have pacemakers are people who would not be able to survive absent outside technology that is implanted in them, for example. So whenever you get away from the fundamental definition of life as an attempt to preserve abortion, what you're really doing is ignoring a lot of the facts on the ground. And what I seek to do is say, listen, you want to be pro-choice? At least you're going to have to reckon with the reality of what it is that you stand for and not obfuscate with a lot of euphemisms.
No, I agree. I think it's powerful, too. And I think one of the most effective things that you're doing, Ben, in this issue is you have effectively reduced the pro-choicers' position to absurdity. All of the excuses that are given for taking the life of a preborn child, which you're exactly right. You and I both share a revelational epistemology, of course, but you and I both believe that biology speaks for itself. It shows that it is a human life from conception. It's irrefutable. You have demonstrated that all of the arguments that they use for their pro-choice ideology are reduced to absurdity. One of those, Ben, I think is powerful, and your response, I think, shocks people. It doesn't shock me. I think you and I have that revelational epistemology, that view of the image of God, life as meaningful, valuable, worthy of dignity and respect. So you and I share that. But you talk, and it shocks people, about the issue of rape, and it's often used by those on the left, even though it accounts for an infinitesimally small amount of the abortion numbers. Less than 2% is life of the mother, rape, and incest. But you talk about that issue of rape. You take it right away from them. You reduce it to absurdity. But you talk about rapists you believe should get the death penalty or castration.
Yes, I mean, I'm very obvious about my feelings about rape, and I think this is one of
It's
those
okay, don't worry.
news. They try to conflate people's feelings about abortion with their feelings about rape, and the suggestion is that you're somehow easy on rapists if you're against abortion in cases of rape, that somehow this means that you are okay with rapists.
I was gonna ask you something, I forget now.
One of the things that I clear is that my feelings on rape are pretty obvious, that rapists should receive the worst penalty that is possible under the law, and you know, that goes without, and that should go without saying. And then you get to the question of, okay, now there's a baby that's been conceived in rape. Obviously, something terrible has happened in the rape. Is that justification for the killing of the baby? Is the determination of a life?
What's the hours? 5 until 9?
The answer to me,
5 till 7.
I don't even
the
know.
source of the impregnation is not
I should find
linked
that out, though.
with the value.
Oh, it's in the
of life
morning,
that has
isn't
now
it?
been created, and it's a horrible
Tomorrow?
situation for the mother.
No,
I
like,
understand that.
no, not
There
tomorrow.
really
It's
is a
afternoon.
question of
You're gonna be working
Yeah, and
afternoons.
I'm pretty sure they close at 5 o'clock.
You preload for the guys.
Yeah.
So you gotta realize sometimes. Oh, that's what I was gonna ask you. Did you tell your boss anything about spray paint or spray insulation?
No, I forgot what it was.
No, it's okay.
I heard him say it, though.
You did? Okay. That's the typically top, the highest paying job besides management, which you could probably work for too one day. But there's something you really want to do, which is not actually a bad future. To work there wouldn't be a bad future, but you want to be at the top. And you get paid decently. The guys in the middle are, I mean, they're happy, but you can do better than that.
To demonstrate that all abortions across the board
So you didn't say anything about spray insulation. Don't press the matter.
No, exactly.
Just maybe ask questions before I ask you. Just ask questions, you know, when you see things. Ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Asking questions is a really good thing to do. Like, really good thing to do. Don't be afraid to ask questions. A lot of people are afraid to ask questions, and that's their
I want
downfall.
to stick out to them.
Let's go ahead and play this last clip here
Yeah.
for Ben and just get some commentary. Roll that third clip, Marcus.
My question is, do you believe
Because I got a couple buddies that still work there. But they're both those French guys, Tommy and Steve. Tommy would probably be a guy you get along with too. He plays video games all the time and smokes weed and stuff. And, he works at Great Northern, and that's what he's going to do the rest of his life. He's very happy about it. He's a really good guy too. You remember Frenchie? You probably remember him. It's his nephew.
Oh,
Yeah, he's younger. Huh?
The older person?
Steve? Steve was the older person with long hair. I don't know if you remember him or not. If you see him there, which you probably will, you'll notice him. I think he still probably has longer hair. They call him Frenchie. He's a French guy. Now Tommy, younger looking guy, he has a really thick French accent.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, you can't miss it. And he's good at what he does too. He pushes backs though, right? When you say push backs, it means you put the pink insulation on the wall.
Yeah.
That's what pushing backs is.
Oh, okay.
One of the things that has impressed me so much, and I'm so grateful for.
And then they do spray, or they do, they fill the attics, and they get like this big huge tube like this round, and they run it from the truck, and they feed these bales of insulation into this thing that rips them all up, and shoots it all through the tube, and they fill the attics up with it, right?
Oh.
They spray the attics with it.
That's cool.
Like it just comes out fluff, right?
Yeah.
It's different than the spray insulation.
This particular issue,
You know.
because I agree with.
I'm trying to give you a heads up on everything, so you can be ahead of everybody.
For legislation, then if we had a situation
Um,
that state-defined life from
When you move a bale of insulation, okay, Jonathan? A bale of insulation, so like,
from conception, and you're not allowed to kill it.
I'll try to do it from
Would
your
you agree
perspective. So
that
like,
at that
a
point,
bale is like this, right?
ahead of us
Yeah.
that we have some consistent
probably seen one
legislation that
before.
agree with you and I both. Would you agree
Right?
with
And then like each inside there's like, they spin like that, right?
to have an
In a
abortion,
bag, and it's in a white bag, right?
knows the law
And
and
then,
for
like,
the abortion.
there'll be like,
At that point, there should be
there'll be a bunch of them, right?
legislative penalties for
And then what they do,
I think it'd be very difficult to actually do legislative penalties for women
and then they have them all, they bind them all together with plastic, right? Right, so they'll be like this big. Right, and what you do, well, they're kind of square, you can roll them. Don't pick them up, they're heavy.
Yeah, they're 35
I also don't think that the process of education is as instantaneous as we change the
I might be thinking something different. Anyways, the ones I'm talking about, they gotta be born in 35. I'm pretty sure they are. Anyways, just roll them. But when they're single ones, you chuck them around like nothing. They're like fluff.
Yeah.
But when you get them in the big ones, they cover them, they strap them with white plastic. And that's stuff you load them. That's the stuff you'll be loading. I can almost guarantee I can tell you what your job is, like right now.
No, probably. I think you've done it, but like just the beginning. But
you want to wear gloves. Which I'll get you a pair. I wouldn't depend on them for gloves. You should depend on them on safety glasses though. They should have safety glasses, yeah. We can get you a pair just in case. I have a pair, actually, if you want to bring them. Yeah, it's actually good. You should always have stuff like that in your pockets, Jonathan. You know what else you should bring in your pocket? I'll get you right now, actually, before I forget.
Before I got into this kind of work, that I'd actually hear that sort of a thing. And so our concern is in terms of, even if the culture believes something about, say, black people or the Holocaust, people of the Holocaust, I think that we ought to work towards legislation that's more consistent in terms of not to care about your feelings, not to human being. If you kill it, you're guilty. But I do appreciate so much of what you say.
Now, what I want you to do is if your boss ever goes, oh, that's a really good idea, I don't want you to be like, oh, my dad told me that.
okay.
Don't ever say that. Just be like, I'm sitting there thinking of what I would need. And I thought of this. And now it's a lie.
Shit for bringing that down?
No. Well, they're probably gonna give you guys one. You have to wait around for it. Anyways, put that in your pocket. That is what they use. That's what I used when I was careful.
That's cool.
You can change the blade whenever and stuff. I'll give you a blade if you need it, but that's just fine. And you will need it too. Okay?
Yeah.
Because you'll get, when you get your bundles, they'll say, so you gotta get 12 bundles. But when you do the math up, there's like 12 and a half. So you have to cut a bundle open.
Okay.
And that's what you use to cut them open.
Cut it in half?
Yeah, you'll see what I mean. You cut, you don't even, you just cut one side and it'll come loose.
Sit in the dry spot, you silly. It's all wet right there. Oh.
Yeah, that's from her bubble. That's not her diaper.
No.
She does that every day.
Let's begin.
What else can I tell you about that place? Wear long sleeve shirt. Do not wear a short sleeve shirt when you work.
Yeah.
It'll keep the insulation. Because if you sweat, that insulation will stick to you. But you should be okay loading it. You probably wouldn't even ever notice it. But you never know. Anyways, you should wear long sleeve. I think you should wear
long sleeve to be warm.
Yeah, well that too. You should always bring an extra sweater too and have it with you.
I don't really have any sweaters I can wear.
That's what I was talking to Mom about. We'll go get you whatever you need tonight. But listen, it's always easier to take a layer off.
Yeah.
Okay? Because if you don't have a layer there, you can't put one on.
Yeah.
And you're stuck like that all day, freezing cold, whatever. It's always better to overdress because you can take layers off.
Yeah.
And in the winter, you'll see what I mean, because the buildings that have you guys working are not heated.
Oh, okay.
And it'll be like a dirt floor with like a big huge dome thing that stretches on forever, and it's just both sides are full of stuff, and they'll give you a list of what you need, and then you gotta go find everything. So don't be overwhelmed. I hope I'm not overwhelming you. I'm just trying to tell you stuff so before you get there, so you have an edge. You have an edge on things. So, and make sure you bring that knife, like, put it somewhere where you're not going to forget it. Like, when you get your work boots, stuff like that, put in your work boots the night before. Like, put them right in the boot. And you want to take your multivitamins, and you want to take a lot of drinks. a couple things of water or whatever. You have to make sure you're well hydrated. And if it's only half shift, you don't have to worry so much about eating, but you have to worry about drinking.
Okay.
Okay? Because the big secret of working a physical job is having a really good lunch.
I know.
And really good snacks.
I know.
Because if you don't have that, you're done. And people need that food energy. It's the food energy. And then if you sweat, you need that liquids to replenish your sweat. And like I've seen guys just crash because they have nothing. They don't bring anything. It just, to me, it's stupid. But
yeah, it's stupid to me too.
Good.
Selena. Yeah, oh, you're so silly.
But I had a lot of fun going up north when I worked at Great Northern. I loved it. I loved it so much.
What are you doing,
It was tough work though. It was constant work, but it wasn't too physical. I've had way more physical jobs, that's for sure. Like way more. And then you get paid for driving time. Say you gotta drive. Like every guy, they all show up. Like all the guys show up at the lot in the morning, right? Yeah. And they go in the office, and then they'll be the boss guy. The guy probably hired you, whatever. He'll be like, hey, you two are going here. 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 You're taking this truck. You're taking this truck. You're taking this truck. And everybody goes and jumps in their trucks and they drive all across Ontario. And you get paid for driving time.
That's actually sick.
So you're sitting there. It takes an hour to drive there, an hour to drive back. You get 2 hours paid for driving.
Yeah, that's sick.
As far as I remember.
Bobby, what do you say, please? Oh, I'm giving it to you.
But that night there will be your best friend when you work there. Trust me. Trust me.
There were a lot of obstacles, and I'll talk about the obstacles in a little bit. But they did attempt to make the effort, and they did unshackle.
And remember, like I said, you take credit for that stuff, okay? Don't say my dad told me to take this or whatever. Okay, you want to take credit.
I want to take it.
Huh?
I want to take that knife once you told me.
No, I know, but don't tell him that. Tell him that you were thinking about it.
Is this an old airplane too?
No. They have 2 of them.
This thing's getting massive.
Yeah, it's got babies in it.
How big is it going to get?
Oh, I don't know. I'm growing this lettuce too.
Oh, yeah.
The trick to that is you have to change water every day or two because the water gets gross, and that's what I messed up with before.
I've never seen this. It's actually working.
I've never done very well, but this one's working. You have to change the water. Once the water gets dirty, you gotta change it. You see, you gotta slice the bottom up. You gotta take a layer off the bottom and then slice it.
Yeah. That's cool.
It's an experiment. The last 2 ones I've done before never worked so well, but this one's gonna work.
That's cool.
Technically, you can grow forever.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
We're doing the same thing here with the onions.
Yeah. Is it working?
Yeah, look how the green's coming up. So I cut it where the white is. See where the white is? That's where I cut them flat. And they're growing. Oh, this one's got a nice one. Shoots coming out. See how the point is? And that's what they'll all get shoots coming out. Yeah, see that where it's white? That's where I cut it.
That's cool.
And that was about 4 days ago. So they're growing, and they got the roots, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting murky.
Yeah.
You don't. That's. I just found out you don't want that. I thought it'd be a good thing because there's minerals and stuff in there.
Yeah, that's weird.
Well, to believe this, you have to have your head so far up your ass you can actually see your colon firsthand. Let's define a few terms. First of all, fascist intellectual thuggery. Let's start with fascism. What exactly is fascism? Well, this is a term that gets thrown around a lot by people who have never read a book. Okay, fascism is the phenomenon whereby people believe that they have the capacity to ram their beliefs down your throat at the point of a gun, or say the point of a baton, or by throwing Molotov cocktails. That's what fascism truly is. Fascism is even more of a tactic than it is an ideology. It's sort of vague in terms of ideology. You've had people on the left who are fascist, and people like Stalin, and then you've had people who are on the European right, like Hitler, who's fascist, who's actually closer to the traditional American left than he would be to the traditional American right. But I've been spending my entire career standing up against fascism, the idea of an overreaching government that uses in order to compel people to do what they want. Antifa is fascist. I am not a fascist. And as far as the service to the Trump Pence fascist regime. First of all, I just want to note something. For all the talk about Trump and Pence being fascist, look at the protests outside. Where's Orange Hitler shutting it down? Right? He's nowhere to be found. This idea that we're living in a fascist country, we're actually living under a relatively ineffectual regime, a relatively ineffectual administration, if anything. But the idea that we're living in some sort of fascist dystopia is utterly absurd. As far as the idea that, I'm a white supremacist in service to Trump Pence, a couple problems there. One, as far as the service to Trump Pence, again, I didn't vote for Trump or Hillary. I didn't vote for either of them, actually. So this idea that I am somehow a servant of Trump is absurd and requires you to be functionally illiterate. As far as the idea I'm a white supremacist, you see the thing on the top of my head, right? This funny hat called a yarmulke. White supremacists aren't that fond of it, which is why I was, according to the Anti-Defamation League, the number one recipient of white supremacist anti-Semitism on the internet among journalists in 2016. But no, I'm a white supremacist now. Because this is the way the left works, right? If you don't agree with them, everyone's a white supremacist. You're a Nazi, Nazis should be punched, and therefore it's totally fine to stand outside and try to shut down events if you can get away with it. They're not getting away with it tonight because the police have been allowed to actually do their job.
Let's get straight to action.
So what is their specific objection to me? Well, according to this masterfully done poster, it says Shapiro is coming to campus to spread ugly fascist views, dressed up in slick-talking intellectual garb. I do like the slick-talking. It says, "This is harmful!" exclamation point. He, along with fascists of many stripes, have targeted Berkeley because reversing Berkeley's radical history would be a major advance for the consolidation of fascism on campuses everywhere and throughout society. The reason I'm here, I've been asked this a lot, the reason that I am here is because fascism does not own this university. Because there are students who do want to hear differing views, who don't want to be told that they can only hear one view, who don't believe that the First Amendment should die under the jackboots and Birkenstocks of a bunch of anarchist communist pieces of garbage. But I don't just want to talk about the people who actually get violent, because I think that in a civil society, this is one thing we should all agree on, and I've been pleased to see that even people like Nancy Pelosi have condemned Antifa. Nancy Pelosi, with whom I disagree on literally every issue it is possible to disagree on, including the proper use of Botox. But she's not there. Right? We well agree that violence should be out of bounds, and if you're on the left and you don't agree with that, let me suggest to you that you don't belong living in a civilized society. Because civilized society is based on the premise that the government has a monopoly on the legitimate use of force, as Max Weber put it, and the idea that you're supposed to violate that if you don't like what I'm saying. Okay, but it's not just that I want to talk about. I want to talk about an ideology that's different than that. Antifa couldn't go anywhere without an ideology that runs broader than Antifa. People willing to look the other way.
Yeah.
Well, what is the view that undergirds Antifa? What's the view that undergirds the hard left, many of whom celebrate Antifa or were doing so until it became politically unpalatable to do so? It's a view that America is a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad place. Now, the truth is that America is an incredible place. It's the greatest place in the history of the world. It is the freest, most prosperous country, most tolerant country in the history of planet Earth. This country is an incredible place full of opportunity. Nobody, by and large, cares enough about you to stop you from achieving your dreams. That includes you, people who are shouting out there in the audience. Okay, no one cares about you. Get over yourselves. I don't care about you. No one cares about you. No one's trying to stop you because you're irrelevant to me. I have a wife and 2 children. I care about them. I don't care about you. You don't mean anything to me. Well, except for that guy who said he loves me. I love that guy too. But everybody else, okay? That means in a free country, if you fail, it is probably your own fault. If it is somebody else's fault, if somebody is actually trying to throw up obstacles in front of you in a way that is unjust and bigoted, point out the specific instance so we can all side with you. We all want to be on the same side. We all want to help out. When somebody is a racist and trying to stop you, we all want to sound off and stop that too. The idea, however, that America as a whole owns your failure when you can't point to specific problems does not wash. It is you shifting the buck. It's a waste of time and energy blaming your failures on the system unless you've got some evidence. But unfortunately on college campuses, and for the left more broadly, there's been this notion that America is bad, and the reason that you fail is because America has historically been very bad. Right? This is the identity politics of the left. Because America's bad in that it targets you. Right? America targets you. And we have an entire hierarchy of intersectionality. that's been built by the left to tell you whether your views are legitimate or not. I mean, the more victimized you are, the more legitimate your views are. So, the hierarchy goes something like this. The people whose views are most valuable and who have been most victimized. At the very top are people who are LGBT, and then you get black people, and then you get women, and then you get Hispanic people, and then you get Native Americans, and then you get Asians, and then you get Jews maybe above Asians, maybe Jews, then Asians, and then the very, very bottom, you get straight white males, right? Those are the people who have nothing to say about anything because obviously they're the beneficiaries of this white privilege system. Now, the logic of intersectionality, because it suggests that the value of your opinion lies in your ethnic identity, in your group identity, the idea is that if I attack your ideas, if I say that you have bad ideas, what I am really doing is attacking you personally. I'm really attacking your identity. I'm aggressing you. You might require counseling. Right? This is the philosophy of microaggressions. My words are violence. Even the term microaggression suggests that it is an aggression against you, right? Microaggressions. I am aggressing you. It's an act of violence. As NYU social psychologist Jonathan Haidt has said, microaggressions are small actions or word choices that seem on their face to have no malicious intent, but that are thought of as a kind of violence nonetheless. The thing is, you don't actually have to intend to offend anyone to microaggress them. They just have to feel offended. And the thing is that microaggressions are actual violence. This is why you see the dolts outside shouting that speech is violence, because they think that I'm actually doing them violence when they don't hear me. Right? But if they would hear me, then presumably I'd be doing them violence and they would need counseling, and if they act with violence, it's because it's in response. And unfortunately, this university engages in precisely this sort of damaging attitude. So at the same time they are willing to allow the police to fight Antifa, they are fostering an attitude that says that certain types of speech are violence, which is the gas in the tank for groups like Antifa. It's the gas in the tank for the hard left. And before my arrival, the university obviously put in place all sorts of security measures to stop people from getting violent, which is great. But they also put out a letter. And they put out a letter to all the students here, and here's what it said. It said that I was a threat because they were going to offer, quote, support and counseling services for students, staff, and faculty. We are deeply concerned about the impact some speakers may have on individuals' sense of safety and belonging. No one should be made to feel threatened or harassed simply because of who they are or what they believe. For that reason, the following support services are being offered and encouraged. And they offer employee support services and student support services. You see, I'm attacking your identity if we disagree about politics, and you may require counseling. By the way, just side note, if you require counseling because of the speech, let me suggest to you that it was a mistake for you to have foregone psychiatric treatment long ago. I know, I'm super scary. I know, look at me, I'm physically intimidating, as everyone knows. Right? I mean, I understand. You're afraid I'm going to turn into the Hulk and ruin your life. Okay, but the truth is, I think that you're big boys and big girls, and you can probably handle it. I assume you're not a bunch of weaklings and pansies and snowflakes. That may not be a fair assumption, but I will assume it for the sake of this argument. I assume you can handle disagreement. If, in fact, you cannot handle disagreement, you are making your life harder, and you're making your life worse, and you are making the country worse. You're driving political polarization by failing to engage on a level of discussion. As you know, we're going to do a Q&A after this, and I love taking questions. It's my favorite thing, and I have a rule, which is if you disagree with me, you raise your hand and you go to the front of the line, because discussion makes the country better. But you feeling insulted and then whining about it, and then suggesting that you're a victim without evidence and that I have victimized you because I won't accept your victimhood, this makes the country a worse place. So I want to go briefly through a couple of the intersectional hierarchy groups, people who feel they're victims in American society, and explain why you are not, in fact, a victim. Why you need to take control of your own life and become an adult. So let's start with the idea that poor people in America are victimized. And this is sort of the Bernie Sanders case. Income inequality is the root of all evil. This Antifa's case that communism or anarchism would be a better solution than, say, a free and civil society that's raised half the world out of abject poverty. Income inequality is not the big problem. Nobody rich is making you poor. Bill Gates did not make you poor. Bill Gates provided you a product, and if you bought it, that is your fault. The upper middle class grew from 12% of Americans in 1979 to 30% as of 2014. That is a massive growth in the upper middle class. The rich are not making you poorer. They are paying your salary. American income mobility, by the way, is just as strong as European countries with far more redistribution. Income mobility drops only when you drop out of high school or you have a baby out of wedlock. Okay, this is what makes you poor. Okay, how about the idea that if you're black in America, there's a white supremacist hierarchy that is keeping you down? Now listen, you'd be a fool not to acknowledge, or a liar, not to acknowledge the history of racism in America. Everybody acknowledges that if you have half a brain. Of course, slavery, Jim Crow, awful, evil treatment at the hands of awful, evil people. We all acknowledge this. We all acknowledge the collective sin of the United States in promulgating this, and the individual sins, more importantly, of the people who actually promulgated this stuff. Okay, we all get that. But that's not what we're talking about. Now we're talking about now. Because I wasn't born when Jim Crow was in place. I wasn't an adult when Jim Crow was in place. I know that I'm not a racist, and I know I haven't acted in a racist manner. And I would bet you money that the people in this room haven't acted in a racist manner, that they haven't held slaves or voted for Jim Crow. I will bet you money that is the case. You cannot fix past injustices with current injustices. The only way to fix past injustices is with individual freedom. That's it. Okay, the idea that black people in the United States are disproportionately poor because America is racist, that's just not true. At least not in terms of America's racism today keeping black people down. It's just not the case. If that were the case, then you'd have to look at income who's been victimized and who the country was built for. Well, by that standard, the country was built by Asians. And because the racial group with the highest median income in the United States is Asians. The Constitution was not written by a bunch of people who speak Korean. Because the Constitution is a document of freedom, not a document of ethnicity. So here are the three rules. You want to be rich in America? You want to do well in America? You want to put aside the whining about the system? Again, you point out to me an individual instance of racism, I will stand next to you and fight it. But if you want to whine about America, no good. Okay, here are the three rules that you need to fulfill as a person before you can start complaining about your life failures being the result of somebody else's actions. Number one, you need to finish high school. Number two, you need to get married before you have babies. Number three, you need to get a job. That's it. You do those things, you will not be permanently poor in the United States of America. According to the Brookings Institute, 2% of Americans who follow these rules are in poverty. 75% have joined the middle class. Well, what about racism? 71% of poor families with children are unmarried. The poverty rate among non-married white families was 22% in 2008. That same year, the poverty rate among black married couples was less than 7%. But what happened to racism? Why weren't those black married couples poorer than the single white moms? Because it doesn't have to do with color. It has to do with life decisions. And we can talk about differentials in crime and where these statistics come from. I mean, the basic rule is that if you don't commit crime, you're not going to be arrested for it. The police are not going around arresting black people for the fun of it. They're going around arresting criminals based on criminal reports, which is why the number of criminal reports based on race matches up exactly with the number of criminal arrests based on race. Okay, if you don't report people for crime, it's hard for the police to know to pick them up. Okay, how about women? This idea that women are vastly victimized in our society. Hillary Clinton is making buco dollars off of this nonsense this week. As I tweeted earlier this week we found out that a clown can emerge from the woods and scare half of Americans, and also it came out. But Hillary Clinton is going around whining about how there's a glass ceiling and she couldn't break through it, and it's all because of sexism. It's not because she was the world's worst candidate and a pretty appalling human being. No, it was because everybody is a sexist. Everybody's a sexist. And we hear in this context very much about the wage gap, right? The idea that women are paid significantly less than men, 72 cents on the dollar. Okay, that's absolute nonsense. It is absolute nonsense. In 147 out of 150 of the biggest cities in America, women make 8% more money than men do in their peer group. That wage gap is growing, not shrinking. At colleges, 55% of women in college are women. That gap is getting larger. 58% of all graduate degrees go to women. Okay, the majority of voters are women. If we are living in a place where women are vastly victimized by men, I'd really like to see that place. And as far as this idea that there's a vast rape epidemic going on campus, every rape, as I've said 1,000 times, every rape should be dealt with by the prosecution of the rapist, ending with their jailing, castration, or death. Okay, that's how I feel about rape. But this nonsense statistic that's been presented that 1 in 5 women on college campuses being raped is just not true. It's just not true. The actual statistic, according to the Department of Justice, is something like 1 in every 58. Obviously far too high, but not 1 in 5. If you're 1 in 5, by the way, if you're a woman at this campus, you should go to your parents and ask them what kind of nuts they are to send you in a war zone where you're likely to be raped. Okay. How about the idea that gays and lesbians are really living under the boot of American society? Well, in terms of income, they certainly aren't. Okay, certainly not in terms of income. Women in lesbian couples make far more money than women in straight couples do. Men in gay couples make slightly less than men in straight couples, but same-sex couples with both partners in the labor force make $8,000 more per year than straight couples, and they are typically higher educated. Okay, so that talks about the identity politics, this intersectional hierarchy of the left. But there's another group that engages in identity politics that I want to talk about now. And it's the battle between the identity politics of the left and the identity politics of the so-called alt-right that is really making the country a significantly worse place, and it needs to stop now because it is utter and complete horrible bullshit. The first thing to note, this notion that the alt-right is actually conservative is nonsense. Let me define what I mean by alt-right, because not everybody who likes Pepe memes or Harambe memes is a member of the alt-right. And not everybody that the left says is alt-right is actually alt-right. I mean, the left calls me alt-right, which is patently insane. I mean, you legitimately have to have a screw loose to call me alt-right. I spend half my career attacking the alt-right. Okay, what is the alt-right? So the alt-right are a group of people who believe that ideology and ethnicity are inextricably intertwined, just like the identity politics left, right? On the identity politics left, if you're a black person who is a leftist, you're a leftist because you're a black person. On the identity politics right, Western civilization was not built by people with good ideas, it was built by people with white skin. And that means that people who don't have white skin cannot properly assimilate into Western civilization. This has no grounding in reality. The fact is that there were lots of white people in Britain before the Romans arrived, and they weren't living a civilized life, as we would currently call it, under Western civilization. In fact, the people who, the Romans, right, when Italians were coming to the United States in the early part of the 20th century, there was tremendous discrimination against Italians because they weren't considered properly white. The definition of white moves around a lot based on convenience. Right? Sometimes Jews are white, sometimes Jews are not white. It sort of depends on what you're talking about. But according to the alt-right, because ideology and race are inextricably intertwined, they must have a white identity politics all their own. If there's a group of people who are fighting for the group identity politics of blacks, or of women, or of gays and lesbians, then there has to be a white group that fights back on behalf of the white race. As you may have noticed, I think all of this is disgusting. Okay, Western civilization is not built on race. There have been lots of countries all over Europe that were not particularly civilized and were quite white. Freedom, personal responsibility, separation of powers, God-given rights protected by a government elected with the consent of the government. These are the values of Western civilization. But the alt-right actually overtly rejects these ideas. They say the Constitution is outmoded, that it doesn't work. They say that government for white people is necessary and good because you can't assimilate people to so-called white culture. They hang out with neo-Nazis because a lot of them actually believe some of the same things that the neo-Nazis believe. White supremacy. Now, let's be straight about this. This is like 10,000 people across the country. And this is not 1 million people. This is not 10 million people. This is not 63 million people. It's not 200 million deplorables. It's a very small select group of absolutely terrible people who believe absolutely terrible things. But they're getting a lot of attention and coverage right now because we live in a reactionary moment. A lot of the people are reacting to the identity politics of the left by making nice with the alt-right. There's this weird notion on the right that if you drink leftist tears, that's enough. Right? Drinking leftist tears is enough. So if the alt-right takes off the left, they're fine. Okay, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. I have no other word for it. Okay, you actually have to stand. It is not enough to stand against bad ideologies. You must also stand for a good ideology. You must stand for a good philosophy. You cannot stand with bad people just because you think those bad people make your enemies cry. The enemy of your enemy in a country where we're all supposed to be friends is not only bad strategy, it destroys the country wholesale. So, how do we solve all this, right? We're on campus and we're hearing the identity politics of the left, and then you watch the news and you see the identity politics of the alt-right. How do you solve all of this? Well, the way that you solve all of this, first of all, let's start with the campus thuggery. The way you solve all that is by letting the police do their jobs. Okay, administrators need to let the police do their jobs. None of this would have gone anywhere if back in February, when Milo, who I significantly dislike, when Milo came to speak, if they had allowed the police to do their jobs and arrest everyone who even hinted at violence. Okay, people who get violent should be arrested and they should spend time in jail. And the authorities have a responsibility to allow the police to do their jobs. And this is not the fault of the cops. This is the fault of cowardly political actors who pusillanimous cowards who hide behind their desks every time some people on the left whine a little bit. Okay, the second thing that has to happen is you have to stop seeing everybody in America as an enemy who despises you based on identity. Again, they don't care about you. You're not that important a human. And not that many of us know each other. Not that many of us care about each other. We care about our families. We care about our friends. And we certainly don't want to stop each other. We mostly want to be treated civilly. And we can all do that if we stop looking into each other's eyes and seeing a potential enemy instead of seeing somebody who's just a person who probably doesn't care about you very much and doesn't want to stop you and doesn't mind what you do. This is not difficult stuff. And finally, Stop seeing yourself as a victim, because in order to see everybody else as an enemy, which justifies...
Hello?
Goodbye.
Yeah, I called the credit card company because we should have had a new credit card mailed out to us like back in February.
Yeah.
And you said you haven't got a credit card. So I called them and there was one mailed out at the end of February. I'm like, well, did somebody steal it? Because we didn't get it. But nobody's used it, so.
Oh, good. I was about to ask that. Jeez.
So, because that's one that you actually have like quite a bit of money available on it, except for there's a minimum payment of $130 due on the 26th.
Okay, whatever. I've
Which is nothing.
got lots of money, and I get paid again tomorrow, so I got tons of money.
Saying that. Like I wasn't worried about that, but I was just like worried because like I thought about it today, and I want you to keep a bill for Walmart so we can actually use the points money because we got like $100 and something of points money on there.
Okay, well that's for you. I will never use that. I will never use that.
But you lost the card.
Okay, well maybe we'll go in and get another one then.
Well, no, I got a call. So I was hoping you had a bill, a Walmart bill somewhere, so I could call.
I'm sure there is one, honey.
Because I'd like to get a new card, because I could get lots of diapers with that and stuff, right?
Of course.
What are you doing?
Missing my woman, being lonely.
Stop.
Listen to my woman tell me to stop. Mai, what are you doing?
Well, I'm just taking a drive because the girls, but I don't think I'm going to find it. The girls told me that they have a new store here in Ingersoll that sells work boots.
I wouldn't buy a pair without your baby.
No, I just wanted to see their prices.
Okay, because your baby's picky.
Yeah, I know, but I could even like FaceTime him to look if I saw something that was reasonable.
Still.
But I can't even find the store, so it doesn't even matter. They said it's across from Cami, and I'm pretty sure I'm lost.
Okay.
So it doesn't even matter. Because the girls at work said that their whoever, kids, whatever, have all got new ones, so yeah, I'm lost.
You're beautiful, honey. That's what you are. You're beautiful. Yes, you fucking are. Don't you goddamn disagree with me, for fuck's sakes.
Holy, Cooper and Blair are fighting bad.
Why? You made them fight?
No, they're fighting on their own. Like, holy crap. Like, Miss Blair told Cooper she's going to put all her stuff out in the hall for next morning.
Miss Blair said what?
Miss Blair told Cooper she wasn't welcome back in her classroom anymore.
Oh.
She's going to put all her stuff out in the hall. I don't know, and I don't...
Can she do that?
I don't think so, but she didn't do it anyways, because when I came to work this morning, her stuff wasn't all in the hall.
Yeah. Probably because she can't do that.
Well, but Miss Blair has to like say everything to her, so I'm just saying everything. I'm not even saying anything.
Sunday instead of Saturday. I don't know. I'll read the text. There we go. There. And it backwards. benefit of still. Bloody very. My son.
wash my shoulders? Can you wash your toes? I can wash my toes.